functionality on top of that. But we want to, like, we don't want to release something and then be like, oh, well, I guess we should have done it this other way. Like, you should redo what you did and like do it in this other technique. We want to do that as little as possible. Recognize, like we did that with USWDS version 2. Sometimes it's important. Sometimes it's necessary. But you do try to minimize that shock. And listen, like, we want to make sure we're building and improving the designs that we do sort of with the expertise of our community. Like, these are things that are starting with real user needs and embracing accessibility is really foundational. But these other points really speak to, like, sort of other kinds of goals that we have as we're releasing things. And this work is also about our product values. And in this case, it's really about 3 of them as well. It's sort of making the easiest thing the best thing. Like, are we releasing something that that is both easy and the best? We want to be a source of good guidance, and we want to be a source of best practices, and we want to make sure that our components build those into to their defaults. We want to be showing our work. We want to be talking about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and we want to be predictable. Similar to the sort of earning trust and promoting continuity, we want folks to know sort of what we're doing, and we don't want a lot of surprises. I realize that it can be sort of an irritating surprise when something isn't ready when it's supposed to be ready, but I think it is less of an irritating surprise than if it is released in a sort of half-baked kind of way. And so those kinds of things get to what we're thinking about as a general acceptance framework for components. And we do have a general acceptance framework that we've developed for components. And I'll run through it a bit here. I'm not going to go through like every line of it because there are a lot of checklist items to check. And we don't need to see every single one. But in general, we want components to be clear. They should have a well-formed user story. They should just they should do what they're supposed to be doing. They should use our code style. They should use our design tokens. They should look like the design system in their defaults. They should be accessible. And I've marked a couple things here with these little red X's that are things where, as we were getting card ready, like these points with card, they were still squishy. They weren't quite ready for prime time in some of these red items. That's ensuring the markup describes a logical structure or outline. These are things where we're still kind of working it out. We did our accessibility audit. There was an issue. That these components should be resilient, that they should really be stress tests with edge cases and outlining the context where the components might appear. This is something where we still needed to do more testing with card. We're finding some places where it was failing, some places where it was acting weird, and like it just needed more of that stress testing. There's a lot of stuff that is under resilience. Resilience is really, can this component work in as many different contexts as is necessary? And that it's evidence-based. We still hadn't had enough user testing on it to justify all of our sort of assumptions, and it still needed some more developer usability testing, some more end-user usability testing, and needs a little bit of extra work on its links and references, like why are we building what we built? Is it actually using the best practice for this component? And wasn't quite there yet. And documented, like are we actually getting it? Like on the site, is everything that it's doing written up? Can folks understand what the component is doing? So clear, accessible, resilient, evidence-based, and documented. And all of those It's sort of silly, but it's like, it spells cared. Have we cared? And that's just what we're trying to think about when we're thinking about whether something is ready. Now, with a lot of checklists, like there is occasionally room for nuance and interpretation. When we're looking through some of these lists about, does it fulfill a certain accessibility requirement, or does it work as expected in this or that environment? Like, there's room for flexibility. Sometimes things can work well, or sometimes things can pass, but they still might not be as good as they could be. There's room for improving even beyond fulfilling a requirement. How can we exceed the requirements? How can we do something? How can we make the best thing the easiest thing? And really, I think that it almost always comes back to feedback and feedback loops and listening, coming back to the design principles again. That really, there's a lot that you can do on your own, but you really only begin to exceed expectations when you build in more feedback from your community and from your users. So that is really, I think, where we need to be improving our process when it comes to developing design system components. I will say it has been a while since we developed new components. We've done a lot of architectural work and a lot of infrastructure work over the last year, and we're building up our muscles again with new components and trying to do the best job we can do. So get ready to see more of our in-progress work in the USWDS public Slack. I think that we want to be reaching out more in the public Slack to connect to GitHub issues, to begin to collect more of your expertise in the work that we do, and to double check our work and to validate or invalidate our assumptions. And I think it's also sort of important to mention that when we're talking about whether a component is ready, to say that ready doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be perfect. That there's always room for improvement beyond simply being ready and good enough to release. But we won't publish it until the work is ready. So that's sort of how we think about readiness with components, and what we've been thinking about with our card work, and where that card still needs improvement. I think it's still about it's about 5 to 7 days out from actually getting to where it needs to be. But it's going to get there, and it'll be out soon. So look for more information about card in USWDS Public, starting soon. So I apologize for what was an unintentional bait and switch with this monthly call, where I've come to see what you have built, and instead get a lecture on process. But that is part of showing your work, I suppose, that you show your work even when your work isn't always where you want it to be. So that leaves some time for Q&A, and with that, I am going to jump out of this thing and navigate back over to this thing and see if I can grab some questions. Yeah, so Dara asks, do we know what the card component looks like? There's so many different types of cards based on the needs of expressing content, examples, events, product. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is to keep it simple, and to try to do something that that gives a good frame for a card while leaving a lot of flexibility for the content of a card. So essentially, what you'll see will be a relatively simple card with a few different kinds of content that you can put into it, like a header, a body, and sort of and actions. And all of those things are and media. So those things are kind of the simple requirements of the card: to present some media, to present a header, to present some copy, and to present a place for actions. And we have some default things that we've put into those sections, but we want to leave it open so that sort of the users of this can decide like what they need their card to show, and to give enough flexibility within that structure so that it can work for a number of different uses. But in general, it looks like a card. That's a silly way of saying that it looks like a rounded rectangle with a border on the outside, with like probably an image and a bold-face thing, and a place for a button and a button. So in general, our philosophy is to try to start with as little as we can get away with and leave as much flexibility room as possible to folks who are integrating the design system. So we're hopefully going to release something that isn't too opinionated about what a card, the content of a card, but with some opinions. How can the USWDS community participate? Oh, sorry. Daniel Miller asks, how can USWDS community participate with testing and feedback for in-progress components? So there are a couple different ways that we can do this, and some that we've been doing already, and some that we can begin to do even more of. You may have noticed some requests in the USWDS public channel over the last couple of weeks for raising your hand if you're interested in participating in a little bit of usability testing around some of our advanced form components. And we're going to be doing some more of that as well. That will be actively reaching out into the USWDS public Slack to try to get some more feedback and to collect different sort of user groups there to test things with. That test might be just like looking through a Google Doc. That test might be looking through some active code. Sort of usability testing could take a number of different forms, but I think looking out for that in USWDS Slack is a good way to pitch in. We'll also be trying to just highlight ongoing work in the Slack channel that's happening in GitHub. So there's always an opportunity in GitHub to be looking at open issues and open pull requests and leaving comments on them. We are paying attention. We're definitely paying attention to activity on GitHub. We work out in the open in GitHub so that folks can contribute when they have something to contribute. Another thing I've been mulling over is this is on the extended roadmap, is thinking about piloting something that I've been thinking of as GitHub teams for subject matter expertise. So let's just say we could begin to collect folks from the community who had expertise in accessibility or in JavaScript or in security or something like that, where you could be part of a GitHub team that we could tag different GitHub issues or PRs with these teams to sort of tag people in to various issues. So that's another thing that we're thinking about trying to do with actively collecting feedback and work from the community. Air Fabino asks, I'm still too new to know what questions to ask. Well, you're getting there. Brian Seek helped me get the stats workflow working by ignoring the directions listed in InfoYAML. Instead, use USWDS GitHub repo. I would trust Brian Seek. If Brian Seek is helping you get started, that's a good person to ask. So. Likewise, sort of asking questions and getting into the USWDS Slack is a good place to start. You can ask any kind of question there. There's all kinds of people who have all kinds of different experience using the design system. So I would feel comfortable asking any kind of question, from a newbie question to something very specific around some sort of obscure part of the design system. So do ask questions. There are plenty of people to listen to and to trust in the Slack, and Brian Seek is one of those people. I saw that there was some hand raising. I couldn't tell exactly who was doing it, or if anyone had a question that they were wanting to ask outside of the context of the chat. But if you do have a question, try to post it into the chat. Or I'm just sort of I don't see the broader chat right now. So hopefully, if I've said something and if you want clarification or that answer wasn't good enough, please let me know. And it looks like I managed to be way under time today, so that's maybe a treat for everyone to have 15 minutes of time given back to you. I know that if anyone is like me, your time is increasingly precious. Well, I'll wait in awkward silence for only a few more seconds before we say adios. Oh, and if anyone, I couldn't see the chat. If anyone knew the concept is valid no matter where it originates, that's a line that a sentient bomb says in the movie Dark Star. So check that out if you have time to watch a movie. All right, on that, thanks for coming to the April monthly call, and we will be back in May, but also in the USWDS public channel, and there'll be a lot more that we'll be doing between now and May. So thank you all, and I will talk to you in a month.